Working late at the office was nothing new for me. Deadlines were relentless, and my boss seemed to thrive on assigning last-minute tasks just as everyone else clocked out. That night was no different. By the time I saved the final draft of the report and powered down my computer, the clock on my desk read 11:48 p.m. The building was eerily quiet, the hum of the fluorescent lights and the faint buzz of the vending machine the only sounds. My office was on the 15th floor of a sleek, modern high-rise in the city. At night, the polished glass walls reflected the empty, dimly lit workspace, amplifying the sense of isolation. I grabbed my coat and bag, yawning as I made my way to the elevators. The hallways were deserted, the kind of silence that felt heavy, almost oppressive. As I reached the elevator bank and pressed the down button, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced over my shoulder, but the hallway behind me was empty. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, its stainless steel doors sliding open to reveal an empty car. I stepped inside, pressing the button for the lobby. The doors closed smoothly and the elevator began its descent. At first, everything was normal. The soft hum of the elevator motor and the subtle vibration of the car were oddly comforting. But as the numbers on the display ticked down, the elevator didn't stop at the lobby. Instead, it kept going. I frowned watching as the display continued past the lobby level, B1, B2, B3. I hadn't pressed the basement button. In fact, I wasn't even sure anyone ever went down there. The basement levels were used for storage, maintenance, and utilities, places no one had a reason to visit, especially at this hour. The elevator slowed to a stop at B4, and the doors slid open. Darkness greeted me. The fluorescent lights in the corridor beyond were flickering sporadically, casting erratic shadows on the walls. A faint, musty smell wafted into the elevator, damp concrete mixed with something metallic and sour. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the button for the lobby. But no matter how many times I pressed it, the doors didn't close. The elevator just sat there, waiting, as if it expected me to step out. "Great," I muttered, trying to keep my voice steady. Stuck in a horror movie cliché. I leaned out slightly, peering into the dim corridor. It stretched in both directions, the walls lined with exposed pipes and conduits. I called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" My voice echoed down the hallway, swallowed quickly by the silence. I pressed the door close button again, harder this time. The elevator refused to budge. Instead, the overhead light inside the car flickered once, then dimmed. My stomach twisted with unease. A faint sound broke the silence, a low, rhythmic tapping coming from somewhere down the hall. It was slow and deliberate, like someone tapping a hard object against the concrete floor. I froze, straining to pinpoint the source. The sound grew louder, closer, but I couldn't see anything in the flickering light. And then it stopped. The elevator doors started to close on their own, and I exhaled a shaky breath of relief. But just as they were about to seal shut, something moved at the edge of the light, a shadow, too large and too distorted to be human. The doors closed, and the elevator began to ascend. I sagged against the wall, my heart pounding. But my relief was short-lived. The elevator shuddered to a stop at B3. The doors opened again. This time, the hallway was brighter. The lights were steady, casting an unnatural, sterile glow over the space. But the layout was identical, exposed pipes, damp walls, and a faint chill in the air. The smell was stronger here, the metallic tang of rust or blood more pronounced. I jabbed at the lobby button, then the emergency button. Neither responded. The elevator stayed stubbornly on B3, its doors open, as if daring me to step out. I stayed rooted to the spot, gripping the handrail, my knuckles white. The low tapping noise returned, this time coming from multiple directions. It wasn't just one sound, it was several, overlapping, like a dozen people tapping in unison. A faint whisper joined the tapping. At first, it was so soft I thought I was imagining it, but it grew louder, more distinct. It wasn't a language I recognized, just a garbled murmur that seemed to seep into my mind, making my skin crawl. "Hello?" I called out again, my voice cracking. "Who's there?" The whisper stopped abruptly. The lights flickered once, plunging the hallway into total darkness. For a moment there was nothing, just the oppressive silence and the pounding of my heart. And then, in the pitch black, a voice came from the hallway. Deep, guttural, and impossibly close. "You don't belong here. I screamed, slamming my fist against the buttons. The elevator doors closed, and the car jolted upward. I clung to the railing, my pulse racing as the display ticked up past B2, B1, and finally toward the lobby. The elevator stopped at the lobby, the doors sliding open to reveal the familiar reception area. But something was wrong. The lights here were dimmer than they should have been, and the air was heavy, suffused with a faint hum that I couldn't place. I stepped out cautiously, glancing around. The front desk was empty, and the glass doors leading to the street were fogged over, the snow outside barely visible. The hum grew louder, reverberating in my chest, and I turned back to the elevator. The doors were still open, but the inside of the car was no longer the stainless steel I'd just been in. The walls were dark, almost black, and seemed to pulse faintly, like they were alive. The buttons glowed with an unnatural red light, and the faint whispering I'd heard in the basement was louder now, spilling out into the lobby. A hand emerged from the darkness of the elevator, long and skeletal, its fingers impossibly thin. Another hand followed, gripping the edge of the doorway as a figure began to crawl out. It was tall, its limbs stretched and unnatural, its skin pale and waxy. Its face was featureless, except for a wide, jagged mouth that twisted into a grin as it turned toward me. I stumbled back, tripping over the edge of the front desk and falling to the floor. The creature stepped fully out of the elevator, its head tilting as it studied me. "You opened the door," it said, its voice a chorus of overlapping tones. "Now you're part of this." It moved toward me, its footsteps eerily silent. I scrambled to my feet, running toward the glass doors. They didn't budge. The creature's reflection loomed behind me, its grin widening. The last thing I saw before the lights went out was its hand reaching for my shoulder, and the whispering growing deafeningly loud, drowning out everything else. When I woke up, I was in the basement, sitting on the cold, damp floor. The elevator was gone, and the hallway stretched endlessly in both directions. And from somewhere in the distance, the tapping started again.